everyone. Welcome back to The Funny Thing Is. I'm your host, Nicole Birch, where every episode I bring you someone who shares their life-changing event, the medicine they took to get better, and the funniest lesson they learned along the way. Today is no exception. Today I have a very good friend with me. He's an actor, producer, the founder of Cool Beans Comedy, and a 3-time Tedx talker, my good friend, Corey Craig. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you. So usually a little bit of history about how we met. So I think we met in 2018.
Yep.
You had done, what was the show you acted in that Josh and John had wrote?
The Real O'Neills.
The Real O'Neills.
Yep.
And so they really liked you.
Yeah.
And you guys hit it off. And then I was just starting to do stand-up. I think I was like a year or something in.
Yeah. And then I came to our little like secret writing group.
Which was great.
And then Jonathan Lee Kirby was like, you guys need to talk.
Yeah. Which was great because also that writing group, everybody's a staffed writer. They're all on Grownish, Blackish. What was the other? I think everybody had a show.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I was just there to fill in funny one-liners pretty much.
I just sat there. I was like, hey guys, you're doing great. You're doing so good.
Yeah, that was a really fun time. Now everybody's like doing big things, which is great. And then I remember I said, I have an idea. I really want to do a comedy special, says somebody who's done very little stand-up comedy. But I had done like 10 years of sketch and Sunday Company and Groundlings and stuff. So I wasn't like a complete novice. And then you said, let's have a meeting at Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
And so I go meet you at Warner Brothers and I get like the great parking and the passes and I start walking and I meet you and you're like, let's walk to the commissary. So we start walking and you start waving hello to every single person on the lot, from the valet to who I believe somebody that was probably the CFO of Warner Brothers, who's being like chauffeured around on a very expensive golf cart.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, what's up, Jim? Yeah, how's your son? T-ball? How'd it go? How'd that game go? Yeah, he's got to work on that arm. Like, and I was like, who the fuck is this guy? Yeah.
That's always been my approach. Like, just say hi to everybody and not really fear anything. So, treat everybody with good energy, and that's kind of how I was able to stay at WB for so long without really a job. Like I just was like, hey, what's up, guys? And they would just let me, say hello. It
was great, and it was just refreshing because in Los Angeles, there's not a lot of genuinely nice people that I think, especially at that level where you're just rubbing elbows with every single I think that's why I was like, I'm now really excited.
Yeah.
And then we talked about it. And then you started coming to see some of my shows. And there wasn't anything, I think we can say it, there wasn't really anything different about my shtick. It was, I was wearing flannels and a fedora and quirky glasses and telling blowjob jokes. So it was like the total standard female comic at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then I go, I don't think I want to do this. And I go, so don't worry about coming to the last show.
And I was already in there. I remember where it was. It was in Glendale.
At this
and they said you could have like 5 and you ended up doing like 10.
Yeah.
Because it was doing so well and it was like this beautiful story.
Doug Bass ran it and he just goes, keep going. Just keep run the light. I don't care. And that story, and I remember looking out at you at the audience and you were on your phone and I thought, oh my God, this guy hates it. I don't even know why I'm up here. And then later I get off stage and I go to my phone and you had texted me all these notes and you're like, this is the hook. This is the story, which if you have not seen it, it's called Never Been Kissed.
Never Been Kissed.
You can still get it on Amazon. It is about, a date I went on with Michael Vartan
from Never Been Kissed,
from the movie Never Been Kissed with Drew Barrymore, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. And we self-funded, and you directed and did an EP'd and did 2 shows at the Ice House.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun and insane. And what a way to cut my teeth on a comedy special.
But that also, like, we were talking before this, like, that set up your storytelling. Like your stand-up is storytelling, having this beautiful arc and seeing that came alive because that's who you are.
Yeah. Oh, it was great. And it was so much. And like the way you ran the set was amazing. And then you still had time to come back to me and be like, hey, I think you're losing it a little. So why don't we take a deep breath? You got this. This is not, you're fine. And you also knew how to coach me, which was great. So that was so much fun.
But that's what the creative process should be. I feel like that's our energy together is like, you support each other in a positive way. And like you are just as happy as success for you as you are your own, and like you grow together. Like that's what it should be. We're both Midwestern, raised, and LA can have its fun, but also you don't have to go and be the weird route.
Right. And then I think 3 of the best lines in that special were ones where I was running it for you and you're like, oh, what if you did this? And those ended up being like really funny lines.
Yeah.
And it was just like so collaborative, and I loved it.
Super fun. Amazing.
I love the whole crew. Like everybody backstage was so great.
Yeah.
And then you had people that opened the show that were amazing. Like I was like, oh, like that Alonzo, Dusty Jabara, Amir K.
Yeah.
Amir K. I still have people that are like, he's so sexy. I started following him after that. I was like, hey, don't
he's
use my name, please.
He's on tour with Theo and just international stadiums, but
he did both of my shows, right? He was great because backstage I did the first one and he goes, that was great, you have it, it's in the tank, now just go out there and just have fun and like let it rip. And I think, and you'd pep talked me between shows, and between you and him I went out there and I was like, I didn't give a fuck anymore because I felt so tight the first show. And that in post-production, I think 96% of the show was the second show.
I mean, that's always my feeling too. Like you always do 2, but I feel like there's always going to be one that you're like, it was just there. And I feel like audiences can tell when you Frankenstein, especially like that you weren't that's a different head. Yeah. That's a different
And
person.
I also had close friends, and the louder, drunker people, I think, at the second show. Good. So that just made it so much more fun.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like you give yourself permission to go and have fun. And that's really all it is about, right? We go to comedy to, get away from our day-to-day lives. And so you getting to tell this story, and it's very, self-deprecating. And so it puts a smile on people's faces.
Right. It was so much fun to do. And I still love those pictures that we got of like us like workshopping stuff. Okay, so with that, when we were getting to know each other in the Warner Brothers parking lot, I asked you about like, how did you get here? Like, how does everybody know you? And I think you said you'd been working there since you were 17.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think this is going to kind of tie into the topic of the show.
Yeah.
So why don't you share a life-changing event? That you want to talk about?
My life-changing event was at 6 years old. My dad died of carbon monoxide poisoning. And that kind of set me off into this world of anger. And
I don't think I knew that's why.
Yeah. Well,
were him and your mom still together?
My mom and him were not together. Not together even when I was like born.
Okay.
I was like and
you're like Everly. Okay. Yeah.
But here's the God's honest truth is this is something that always splits me, is like they don't know if it was carbon monoxide poisoning or suicide. So it's always been this thing. At 20, I found a police report that was like undetermined, and I was just like, what does that mean? And it said suicide ? And I just remember just like bursting out because you were like, this dude chose to leave me. Like I've always had now, and I just have this like split in my life. And so as a young kid growing up in Nebraska, the Midwest, you want your dad. So sports was my everything. So I was aggressive. I was just like, tackling kids, checking people. Like it was just my outlet of expressing myself.
What was he pretty involved in your life?
No. I did not like him. Like I was petrified of him. So in a way, like looking back at the time, I was furious. I was mad at the world. I was like, you're going to give me something, world, because you if something that drastic happens so young, your whole life changes. Your whole life changes. You grow up instantly, and the fun of life kind of goes out. And so I got
become
mad.
An adult.
It was just it was frustrating to go to like sporting events and like want to try to do well, but I've always been, it's never looked pretty. Meaning my basketball shot, I love basketball. Hideous. I don't have great form at all. But I had to look over and be like, Kevin, does your dad want to come teach me? And he's like, go home. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like I wanted that. I wanted, because what's my mom going to do? I was raised with my mom and my grandma. My mom was like, kill him with kindness. My grandma was like, don't take shit from anyone. And after seeing my mom's, pitch work for just a little bit, I was like, no, I'm going to go hardcore, and I'm going to tell teachers to fuck off. And I'm going to just, I was like an animal trapped against a wall. I was like, I'm ready to go. Come at me.
You're ready to fight and rebel. Yeah. Okay. How long? So that you were from 6 years old to when?
Of
like
how
long were you? Yeah.
So, okay. So I had this conversation with my mom literally last week. There's video of me in preschool at 3 years old being filmed because they were putting me on Ritalin at 3. Do you understand how bad you have to be at 3 to get put on Ritalin?
Oh
like every kid is biting other kids and hitting other kids. Like I took it to the next level. They're like, I got kicked out of one preschool. That's what my mom told me. And then the next preschool was like, he can come here if he takes Ritalin. So I had Ritalin.
Yikes.
Flash forward to middle school. I was getting in trouble all the time. Like between middle school and high school, suspended over 30 times.
How many times?
30.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was just mad. Like, and the thing is, I could charm people too. I had my mom's side of me. So principals would get mad at me. Also be like, Corey, you're my friend. My best friend in like school was like my special ed principal. I still talk to her to this day.
That's crazy. And for those of you who are just listening, Corey's a brick shit house. You're like 6'2", gorgeous abs, and like you haven't had sugar in like 20 years.
But
so charming. Yeah.
Middle school, they were like, we need to step this up. So they took me from Ritalin to Risperidol, which is an antipsychotic, which how
can they give that to? Okay.
I was diagnosed with ADHD, OCD, and Tourette's. ADHD, I honestly just wanted I was just a hyper kid. Like even right now, like I have energy. I sometimes like, get a little too energetic, whatever. OCD, your dad dies at 6. You want some stability. So I was like,
Control.
Exactly.
Yes.
I like to touch doorknobs. Get over it. You know what I mean? Like, and Tourette's, honest to God, I think I just like to cuss because I was like, when did I ever have tics? So anyhow, they gave me this medication. It didn't fix any of my problems except it made me fat because Risperidol has a terrific side effect of weight gain. So I weighed like 10 pounds more then than I do today. So.
And you were how old?
I was at probably like 12 when they first started giving me this.
Good grief.
Ritalin. Right. My mom was like, you were always very, very stubborn though. So at a certain point you said, I'm done with Ritalin. And then in sophomore year of high school, I guess in 8th grade of middle school, that's when I found acting class. You talk about, finding your medicine.
What's your medicine?
Medicine for me was defending myself, but then it came in the form of acting class. Like the very first day of theater class, the teacher goes, all right, I need a volunteer. And I raised my hand and 3 other kids raised their hands. So went up to the front and he's like, all right, Corey, you raise your hand first. We're going to do an improv. You're going to be the sergeant. These other 3 are going to be your soldiers. All right, action. And I go, you mean I could just do whatever I want? And he goes, yeah. And I go, you sure? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, all right, motherfuckers, we're going to fucking war. Pop, 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 pop. And all my classmates are like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh man, like I got so into it. So I went over to grab my backpack and Mr. Hoffer, my theater teacher goes, Corey, where are you going? I go, to the principal, dumbass. I know how this works. And he goes, no, hold up. He goes, first off, don't call me dumbass. And then he's like, but that's what we got to do here. We got to be other people. And like, I was just like holding back tears because I was like, that, you mean every time that I get made fun of? Because I went from like the obnoxious kid to the fat ass obnoxious kid. I would never felt in my own skin. Like I just was this kid. And so
you were just wearing all these labels that people were putting on you.
And doctors, my own family wrote me off. Like everybody was like, yeah, I mean, I'll be completely honest. Like I was put in a youth psych ward twice.
What's that like?
They put you in the back of a police cruiser. They drive you to a psych ward, which is in a hospital. And then they say, give me your shoes because they got to take out your shoelaces. And I was like, just keep my shoes. I care too much about them. Like, yeah. So there were so many times that you're like, I'm not even a person. At this point, I was just like
you're an
part
avatar.
of a factory.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so this class, I was like, I got to be somebody else. And granted, my very first character in the school play that we wrote was a woman because I was so fat and I had to wear a bra. Anyhow, swear to God. And then in sophomore year, I found out at the high school we were losing our funding in the arts. So that meant no more theater. And cut to English class, we're doing the popcorn reading. We're like, I'm done reading. Your turn, Nicole.
Right.
And they kept sending it back to me, and I was like, I hate you guys because they were just picking on me. And I read about the Fame School, and I raised my hand because I heard, I was like, what is this? I go, this is a real school? They go, yeah. And I go, what do you mean? Like, I'm stuck in this penitentiary, and you can go and be in an art school? So I just skipped my next class. I went to
that's how you found out about that.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because I think when we're kids, we just think that everybody lives that certain life. I had no idea there were like schools for performing arts.
Right.
I was like, no, we have to learn like arithmetic, right?
Uh-huh.
And they're like, well, yeah, you do, but you can also. I was like, give me that. Why didn't I get that option? Instead, it was Catholic school. All right. All right, go ahead.
No, absolutely. I mean, you feel lied to.
Right.
I feel like there's such a glass ceiling, you know, in the Midwest specifically, because like, oh, do you want to go play football? Do you want to be a farmer? Do you want to go work at Goodyear tire plant? You
That's
know what I mean?
it. Those are your options.
Those are your
right.
options.
Right.
And so I was like, what? The thing that I could be somebody else and you guys aren't going to make fun of me all day long is something I can go do. I literally skipped my next class, went with my special ed administrator, and she helped me apply. I looked at, there was like 500 magnet schools across the United States. And I was like, what? I applied for one. LA County High School for the Arts. Like, I'm going there.
And at this time you lived in Nebraska.
Lincoln, Nebraska. I could see my high school from my bedroom. That's how close I lived. And so
that's how like small your world was. And then you're like,
so
LA,
yeah.
Los Angeles. Let's go.
I got, luckily I knew somebody out here. So I had to go. They gave you like a 3-day notice to come out here to apply, to audition for your application. And my mom printed out like a stack this thick of my reasons why I should go here as opposed to my permanent record, because my permanent record was rough at that time, being suspended over 30 times. And I was like, please let me in here. And somehow, some way I got accepted. I got the letter and I flipped off my school. I was like, I'm out of here. My mom and I moved out here to LA. And
how old were you then?
14.
14.
14. Yeah.
Okay. How do you go from 14 to 17 working at Warner Brothers?
Yeah. So I went to the LA County High School for the Arts senior year. The head of HR comes to our school and goes, anybody who wants to intern here, just email me. I was like, what's your email? And he's like, you got to figure that out, and left. And I was like, okay, easy.
Oh my God.
It's not going to be that hard.
Dating in LA? Yeah. Jesus.
So a few of us emailed, and my buddy and I, Tori Thompson and myself, Tori's a great actor and comedian as well. We were like, we're getting in there. And so we emailed I emailed so many times that I heard later that they just gave me the job because they wanted me to stop emailing them. But I come from a mindset of a closed mouth does not get fed.
I know you do.
So let's go.
Yeah.
And then once I got there, I was like, you're not getting rid of me. Like, you treat people with kindness. So I did have my mom's integrity, but I had my grandma's, you know, in just energy to go about life. Like, you're going to get stomped so many times in LA. So you have to have that toughness, but treat people well.
Yeah. And the closed mouth doesn't get fed thing, that has always been my principle. And I told you recently, I was like, for some reason, the last like 3 months, I've had an issue with asking. But then I think back on us working together. The only reason the special is on Amazon and that it was lucrative was because we emailed everybody. The top of Netflix, all the way like everywhere. And finally somebody was like, oh, we can do that.
We got 2 offers for yours. Like, I remember calling you.
Oh, that's right.
I remember calling you and going.
I forgot that.
Yeah. And I was like, Nicole, you ready? You sitting down? You're like, what? And I was like, let me read this email to you. Because you need those wins. But I also firmly believe if you understand your why, sometimes it just organically happens. And I think for you, you wanted a special. I wanted to work with good people. Because realistically, the reason why I'm out here, you know, the reason why I love being open to other people is family is such a loose word to me. Like, I have stapled on branches, taped on like glued, you know, glue gun branches. Like, I want that camaraderie that I feel like I missed out on.
Right.
Yeah. What
was your behavior like from age, once you got into the school, 14 to 17? Like, had it changed, or were you still like
Oh, there was one moment. I mean, there was one moment specifically. We had this little tiny PE teacher, like, you know, and there was a moment where somebody called me a jock, and I just got sick of it because they were like, what up, jock? You play sports? And I was like, what does that mean? Yes, I've played sports, but I'm clearly at an arts school. Like, the coolest kid was like the thespian. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, you're a jock, you're a loser. And I was like, okay. And so we were in PE, and I just was like, say something. I got up right on him, and this little tiny PE teacher got in front of my face. He goes, do you want to lose all this? And I was like, no. And so I ran away. But maturation definitely took its time with me.
Okay.
It took its time with me. And I remember, if we want to go there, like in Nebraska, there was a there was a Christian group called Campus Life, and every Tuesday you could go there, and they would, they would lure you in with donuts, and I was like, that is game.
Donuts.
I was just burp, just there. And I remember one time they gave a lesson, and they were like, God does everything for a reason, and so it got done. And I hung around, the bell rang, and I went up to the main guy and I go, Brian, why did God take my dad? I've been waiting my whole life to know this. And he goes, I can't answer that for you. And I went, fuck you, Brian. And I was done with this. And then
fuck your donuts.
I was like, you're lying to me. Senior year of high school, there was another teacher. I was mad and upset. And I go, and he's like, Corey, what's the matter? I go, I'm just mad at life. Like, I'm a senior. I don't know where I'm going in life. This is before I got accepted to Warner Brothers. And he's like, well, what's the matter? I was like, well, my dad's gone. I don't know anything. He goes, well, I can't help you with your dad. I go, I know. Brian already told me back in middle school. And he goes, we can't figure out why God took your dad, but we can know that it planted a seed inside of you. And he put his hand right here on my chest, and I just went, I was like, okay, because that's my motor. That's my motor. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you start working at Warner Brothers, and because like at some point you're allowed to, like, from what I know, you work out there every day, like 3 times a day, and you're just talking to everybody.
The basketball court was how I met so many people.
Yeah, that's and also a great gym, by the way, that they have there. That's nuts.
Yeah,
and I didn't know they have like their own school for kids, employees, kids, right?
They did, but they just tore that down.
Oh no!
Yeah. Maybe they're gonna build a new one, but yeah,
I knew a girl who was a teacher there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that gets you there. What's next?
So I got into the procurement department, which is basically the most respectfully boring job that I think you could ever have. You literally would get a piece of paper, then you have to sift through thousands of papers to match it. You were just auditing purchase reports.
Okay.
And I'm a really good talker. So at a certain point I was like, oh, I need to go do this. And like my lunches became like 3 hours, and I would just go talk to everybody. So it was a benefit because I was so bad at it. They're like, you were the worst intern ever. And I was like, thank you. Because I got to talk to everybody. So I met a producer there that was like, go talk to Silver Pictures. And I went over there and was like, can I get an internship after my internship ends? And so it just one became another. Then I got a job at a production company, and I was probably the worst intern ever. Like, but people loved me. Like, I made a table one time, and the moment I got done making it, I just put the hammer, just set it down. I just shattered it. I put an IKEA table upside down backwards. Like, one time they had a meeting with Peter Roth, and anybody knows Warner Brothers and TV, Peter Roth was the man. And they're like, can you staple this fat stack of decks? So I was like, oh, that's very thick. And down the street, or down the hall rather, was art department for Zack Snyder's like three it was like 300 around that time, or the Watchmen, one of them, and I just stapled them all together. They wanted me to collate and staple them, but I just fat stacked.
They like literally stapled them.
I was not good. I was not good.
But how long were you there? You were there forever.
I was there forever.
Yeah.
Like I was there until COVID.
Yeah.
I remember like, we'll be back in 2 weeks, and then goodbye.
No, 2 weeks.
Farewell.
Oh my god.
Toodles. Yeah.
Okay, so then when do you start acting?
I started acting
like professionally.
Like it was in between. I got my very first like commercial in Taft-Hartley, junior year of high school. Like got a Jack in the Box commercial because I had like shaggy hair.
I had like a Jack in the Box. That's what bought the Jeep.
No way.
Look at us.
Which one was yours?
Mine's the one that got a little bit of buzz because it was about the teriyaki bowls and how Jack's bowls are the best, and instead like it was a play on Jack's balls, and they were like, this is during the Me Too movement, you can't talk about. It was so weird.
And you're like, thank you.
But then it ran another round because it got, I mean, Jack, they know what they're doing. Like they knew that it was gonna. They were probably the ones who paid people to do it for sure. Yeah. To make it go viral. So get you
noticed
with your shaggy hair. Okay, now wait. When did you start getting into like great shape?
Oh, okay. So
yeah, because that's part of it.
Sophomore year of high school. Once I auditioned for the LA County High School for the Arts, I came back to Lincoln and I was like, I'm done with this. I stopped taking all medication, and I basically like starved myself for like a month.
Yeah.
And I lost all the weight. Like I ate like an apple a day, and I had teachers coming up to me like, we're worried about you. And I've always been a determined kid. Like that's all I focus on. It's just bop, 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 bop. And so I just was like I got a treadmill for like $300. We put it in the basement. It was just my mom and I. And every morning I'd run on it for like 30 minutes and I would tell myself, one day I'm going to look good enough for a girl in a bikini. Cause I was like, I'm going to LA. And so I came out to LA, and I remember in Lincoln when I finally like lost all the weight, I remember hearing two girls talk about me. They're like, oh my God, Corey looks cute now. And the other one goes, yeah, but he's still a dick. I was like, okay, good to know. All right. I guess I'm going to take that as a win.
Okay.
And so I came out to LA and like, you know, I went to an arts high school. So I had my picking of like, hello, ladies. Yeah.
Okay. So here's another question.
Yeah.
So after you got off all the medication, did you notice anything like mentally?
No. Because I'm going to be honest, I don't feel like I have anything. And I feel like...
You probably don't.
I feel
You're
like...
not on anything now, right?
No.
Ugh.
I take Nutrafol for my hair. I don't know if they sponsor you, but that's it. But no, I mean, I don't take anything because I don't know. I think a lot of it comes from like within. Like every morning, if you want to talk about medication, it's my daily journal of like what I need to do for the day and you know, an affirmation for the day. But I think the same way that I work out is the same way I want to try to treat this, because this can be a beautiful thing, but you know, your brain can also be a very deep, dark hole, especially out here. Growing up in the Midwest, like, you know, I would tell you all the time, I'm going to KC, going to see my family. Now they're all back because my cousin just moved back to Lincoln. So my family, like my nephews, my nieces are there. It's a different world. Like I love that for them. And I sometimes go like, could I? But LA is different. It hits different. So you got to have the mental toughness.
I never thought I'd go back, and now I want to, but I never thought. I was like, oh, LA's my forever home. But then I had a kid, so it's different. But
it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So wait, they're all back in Lincoln?
Mm-hmm.
So no more KC?
No.
Oh, no.
No, I'll come for you.
Yeah, come visit.
Yeah. KC's amazing.
If that happens. Okay, so... I think like the over medication of children is the fact that they were doing that when you were 3 is just insane.
Okay, so I did a documentary with Suzanne Luna, who's a partner in Cool Beans now, a 6-time Emmy winner. And in that process, the documentary is about a 10-year-old with autism who found his voice through stand-up comedy. Right. And because I coach him, you know, I was part of it as well. So like, hey, do you have any old archival footage? So I was talking about there was a playground. You see me, kids are all, you know, having a good time. And you see me, and I just come deck 3 kids. I just clothesline them. And then they cuts to them like talking to me and interviewing me. And like 3-year-old Corey puts his legs up on a desk and is like, what do you want to know? And then
I need this footage.
I have it. And she goes, this woman interviewing me goes, so what else is new, Corey? And I was like, I take medicine. She goes, you take medicine? Yeah, so I don't bite people. It was either bite or fight. You can, whichever one. So I don't fight people, so I don't bite people. And the editor of the documentary found that and put it's in the documentary. But I was like, I had no memory of this at all.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So at 3, Ritalin. Insane.
That feels so, I remember because Everly had really bad, they always say there's biters, hitters, which are usually coincide with each other. Then there's runners, jumpers, and then there's tantrums. Now, the first ones that I mentioned are all usually worked out by like kindergarten, except tantrums. Tantrums is a personality trait, which Everly's was always tantrums. And I mean, to an octave that will shatter glass and like kicking and screaming. She's busted her lip open, just like fighting herself. She doesn't do it anymore. But I mean, she still has that personality. It just doesn't get that heated. And I'm like, even that, I would take her to the pediatrician. I'd be like, look, I think she's bipolar. And he's like, it's too young for us to know any of that. But back then, maybe they were like, yeah, let's just throw meds at it and see. Spaghetti to a wall. What sticks? It's crazy.
I mean, and I mean, you know, as a mother, like you always want to do the best for your kids. So I think my mom was just trying to. Oh,
if a doctor told me like this will help, I'd be like, okay, let's try it. Like there's
there's no fault to it. But now I'm just like, can't you just ask a kid how they're feeling? Right. That's why I feel like I'm so good with, because you know I coach kids now and help out with that, and I think a kid sometimes just needs to be heard or at least spoken to on a level
or connection. Yeah. I know Everly she's really very talkative and she can be high energy. And I know when she gets like that, she'll start repeating the same story over. And I just literally put my hand on her shoulder And sometimes I'll pull her on top of me and I'll just like kind of hug her and give her a squeeze. And instantly she calms down. She collects her thoughts. Then she tells me what she really wants to say. And it's like, oh, that changed everything.
Is her love language physical touch?
I think it's material possessions or whatever, that a gift giving. I don't know why. I think all kids that age like prizes and stuff and treats. So maybe that's it. But there is something about, it would either, it's one or two would be, her first or second would be physical touch, because it just calms her down and she just gets so revved up. And I'm like, all right, we're going to breathe. And she's like, no, I was saying, when I think about, I was going to the, blah, blah, and she just starts rambling. I'm like, come here. And she sits down. She goes, I love my friend Ellie. And you're like, okay, let's talk about Ellie. Like, what are we talking about? Yeah. And really it has nothing to do with Ellie. She just wants mom's attention because maybe she saw me on the phone, or maybe I've been frazzled, or I've been cooking, or I've been whatever when she gets home. And she's just like, oh, I want one-on-one time.
Yeah. And that's crazy. That's the stability that I think all kids need. And
yeah. And like you, she didn't grow up with mom and dad living in the same house. So it's always been kind of chaotic. I mean, we try to keep it as little chaos as possible, but it's not the normal. And I think she's getting to that age where she realizes mommy and daddy don't live together. Yeah. But she has a really stable home with each of us individually. It's just not ideal.
Yeah. 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 No, I mean, in my case, like, one was definitely safer. My mom's like, you were always stubborn. Sometimes apparently my dad would come to the door and I'd be like, I'm good. Like, not going with you this weekend.
That's her. Like, she doesn't hold back. Thank God. Because I'm like, if anybody did touch her or hurt her in any way, we would know within 5 minutes, because she's the first one to be like, this is what happened today. I did not like it. And I'm here to tell you about it.
Good.
You're like, thank God.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did Cool Beans come about?
Cool Beans came about because the producer at Warner Brothers, the production company, was like, hey, go do stand-up comedy. I was like, hey, no. You know what I mean? And he's like, name me one comedic actor who hasn't at least tried it. And I was like, I don't got and he's like, okay. So I went out and tried it and had some, fun with it. And Cool Beans came around because I did an open mic. And I remember going to the bathroom. And for those who don't know, an open mic is just everybody gets together. But this was at like a theater, so there was a lot of people there. And I did my 5 minutes, went to the bathroom, and I came back out and everybody's laughing. But I noticed like a few people kept like looking back at me. And I realized that this comic that was on stage was just railing my time for his entire 5 minutes and just making fun of me. And I was just soul crushed because I was like, you guys don't understand. Like, I'm out here in LA all by myself. My mom stayed out here after high school because she moved out here with me. But I was like, I'm not trying to hurt anyone. Like, why are you attacking me? I'm already being vulnerable, trying to like talk about things. And it really devastated me. And so I just wanted to create a community where it was positive, same way that we kind of met, because I really do feel if you're going to be vulnerable, if you're going to try to do anything in life that's worth working hard towards, you should be encouraged with your work ethic and encouraged in like a positive manner. Right. And so I did it in spite of that feeling, which honestly kind of stunted me to write for a very long time.
Yeah. And I started coaching for you. And we literally talked to the students about this last week, where they're like, well, where should we do open mics? And both of us have the same response, where it's like, oh, they're so awful. Yeah. Like, you don't, in my opinion, do I think that it's potentially a good way to like get it? Sure. But I haven't heard anybody that had a great experience and that launched their career. So I did it once also. And that's the only time I did it. And I was at the Improv, and I found out, now this was years ago, but I was at the Improv, and it was right when I started going from groundlings to stand up. Yeah. And I went with a bunch of groundlings people. So I was like, well, at least we know we're going to be funny. And it was a drawing. A 10th of the room got to go up. Me and my friend both got to go up. And then afterwards I went to the bar, made friends with the bartender, and I was like, so where's the booker? And he goes, oh, he hasn't been coming to this thing for like 6 months. And I'm like, then why am I here? Like, I don't need I've done stage time. I did I've been on stage for like 4 years. What do you mean? Like, how do you get booked here? He's like, you got to know somebody. I was like, this is stupid. Then I'd rather just network instead of wasting my time.
Well, there's a different circuit. If you do the open mic circuit, it's probably a lot more crass. It's definitely put on, right? It's
club, like road comics.
Yeah. So for me, like, like I was saying, like I created my own like private open mic with like a few friends who, are working, who are, like, so we meet once or twice a week, and 3 or 4 of us, you get up there, do your time, everybody gives positive notes back, and then you keep moving forward. But I'd much rather that than going somewhere, because you're going to waste so much time. And I understand you put on reps, but I think you should grab 3 or 4 friends, everybody get together, treat it like an acting class, and once a week you're doing it and you're sticking to it.
Yeah,
so
hash out material.
Not my favorite.
All right, so we got through the life-changing event, and the medicine you'd say would be like acting, right?
100%.
And then what would be the funniest lesson you learned along the way?
Funniest lesson for me is that funny for me is, you kind of look back, and I think the anger, you realize like you're not really an angry person. Like that's been my funniest, revelation, is like, I'm not really that angry. It's just that I was mad. I was mad at situations, and I go to therapy and have kind of found solace in talking through things.
Right. I also think like you're such a 180 from the guy that you told me about, where you're like, oh, I was overweight and just rageful, and I'm like, what are you talking? How did you get from that to this? It's so different.
I mean, honest to God, like the worst thing I ever did in school was smash my backpack through the principal's glass coffee table. I did things like that. But then I remember in the pandemic, I was in a relationship that I remember laying on the carpet and just crying, and I was like, oh, and I started going like therapy and like talking through things and realizing, how to talk and communicate. But in all honesty, we were talking about this, like the funniest lesson is, again, getting your mind right is talking to yourself. The self-talk. Right now, my therapist is like, hey, there's 2 Corys. One Corey is Coach Corey, because I have Cool Beans Comedy and I coach there. There's Performer Corey. She goes, you're amazing as Coach Corey, but you're pretty shitty to Performer Corey. Like that, you because when I was young, I was like, oh, dads in the Midwest, you gotta be tough. So I'd be like, you suck, Corey, do better, you suck. Like, just like, man, you trash. Like, that's how I talk to myself. She's like, you gotta do better. And so we were talking about the Netflix documentary Receiver, and George Kittle talking to himself and being like, hey, pumping himself up. Yeah. And so I've been doing that now. So that's hilarious for me. I had an audition yesterday where my buddy was helping me, and I was like, Corey, you're doing good, man. Have fun. Keep going. He's like, what are you doing? I go, shut up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it helps though. I started doing that since we talked about it, even before I watched the episode, where he was really getting, because he was like, no fear. And he was just like at it. Yeah. And I was thinking this, some people like when I'm with a personal trainer, I do like them to kind of yell at me. Not like, you suck, you can't do it. Be like, come on, you can do better. Blah, blah, blah. That's fine, because that's still positive talk. But I was thinking my dad kind of coached all 3 of us kids in one way, shape, or form. And so my sister did really well with him like yelling and getting angry. And then he tried that with me once, and I was just a puddle. And he's like, oh, I can't coach her that way. That's not how. Yeah. And so I think for some people it's different. But now I would be really curious. My sister and I had this conversation. I go, if he would have talked to you positively, would that have changed things? And she was like, oh, I think so. Huh. She could take it more than I could. But all dad had to do with me is be like, you can do anything. You're the best out there. Like, you can go do this. Like, I would do cross country. And he's like, this is nothing. A 5K? Yeah. You've been training for way harder than that. And then I'd crush it. I mean, not really. I was a terrible athlete, but I finished.
I think that's the point of a run.
That's the point of cross country, right?
But like, one of my favorite books is Mindset, the New Psychology of Success by Carol Dweck, and it's all about growth mindset, fixed mindset. You can't do something, or you can't do something yet. You know what I mean? You're coaching the effort versus the person, and that changed my entire life.
Wait, do you want to coach the effort or the person? Which one?
You want to coach the effort.
Okay.
You're not saying, hey, you're the best at this, because then you're just like, oh, it just comes to me naturally. But hey, great job of working towards that. Like, that's what you coach. And that is, they did so many studies on like that really plays a profound effect and result of that type of work.
Okay.
So, I have that in my head, but also like, even, admitting, like for men, like we're afraid to admit things, and it's like, no, you can admit you're afraid, but then you can talk it out. Like, I was scared shitless of like a bar show I had the other night, because I was just like, oh, these are bar people. I don't look like I should be here, you know? And you're like, all right, man, you're going to go have fun. But I do love that.
Yeah. I will say you did open for me in Dallas this past Mother's Day weekend. And it was so much fun, dude. Because it was Dallas, Texas. It was a lot of women drunk on mimosas all weekend long.
I love that part.
And, and they love Corey. As soon as he got on stage, they were just like, it was catnip. It was great. I had so much fun, dude.
So much fun.
Where do you want people to find you?
Corey Martin Craig and Cool Beans Comedy.
Yeah. And you guys have to check out Cool Beans Comedy if you're in the LA area and you're trying to like work on your first 5 minutes, or if you want to workshop stuff, because it is the one place where you end up doing a full show in the legendary room at the Ice House. You're not going to get that chance starting out in LA. That just doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, Nicole, you're there as well.
Yeah. And I love coaching. I love coaching them.
Yeah.
Like I still go home and like Matt, my husband, is like, you are always so excited when you finish, because I'm just like, oh, and then this one person said this, and then they did this. And I was like, we have a 79-year-old guy who's trying it for the first time because he's like, I didn't want to be 80 and say it didn't happen. I'm like, oh my God.
Yep.
And he's like got he's like socks are all the way up. Sherlock. And they're up to his knees. And it's just like, it's so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's so many comics that are like, oh, you can't teach comedy. I'm like, you'd be surprised. Some of these guys have a better 5 minutes than you've had in a while, buddy.
And you pay it forward and you learn a lot by teaching.
Yeah. Oh, that's the huge thing I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're really good.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming
You're
on.
amazing. Thank you for having me.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching the Funny Thing Is podcast. Find us wherever you get your podcasts, and also follow me at Nicole Birch Comedy. We'll see you next week.